Hey guys, we're gonna switch it up on you. We were gonna do gray grout lines on this wall, but I actually wanna take this opportunity to show you how to apply our decorative wall kits. You guys can get those right off our website. Now, since it is gray and it does have a texture, it's basically similar to what your painted walls in your house are gonna be. And the fact that it's gray, but we want black grout lines, all I'm gonna do is paint the wall black using any interior paint. We're gonna be doing semi-gloss. That's gonna give us our black grout line color, and then you guys are gonna see the rest of the process. We're gonna be mimicking decorative concrete tilt-up walls that are interior, and they have the cool tie-down holes from where they held the forms together when they poured it. We're gonna mimic that with big old concrete tiles and a cool custom hashtag Leggari Nation in the middle, and you're gonna see the full process coming up. So we got about half of the wall done, and this is what I mean by painting your existing wall, whatever color you want the grout lines. Like I said, if you want your grout lines to be brown, red, whatever, you're just gonna paint your wall that color. We want black grout lines, so we're painting over our wall with black. And our textured concrete overlay has a similar texture to a textured interior wall. And when you're taping on anything that's textured, you're gonna usually get a lot of bleed marks, but we're gonna show you how to, a little Leggari tip to prevent getting those bleed marks after we tape off our design. But that's basically what we're looking for. And if you notice, when I dip and roll, I'll dip in the tray, I'll start in the middle and kind of feather it out. You never really wanna dip in the tray and start towards an edge, because you wanna kind of feather that out. You're always gonna have the most material on your roller once you dip it in your tray. And obviously this is a larger wall. You could do a 9-inch, but 18-inch rollers make it really fast and simple. So I'll finish this out, and then we'll get started on doing our tape design once this dries. So what I did is I kind of mapped out our design. So you can see here, we got our hashtag Leggari Nation in the middle. Now, I'm not the greatest drawer, but you gotta get the idea. So what we did is we made our marks on the edge of the walls. We're gonna run these long lines with our filament tape first, and then we're gonna make sure we get this centered. We're gonna get this square figured out first, get it centered, and then we'll kind of split the difference from there. So we'll work on this one after we get all our horizontal lines done, get the logo area done, make sure it fits and looks symmetrical, and then we'll finish out these, and then we'll add the dots. It's gonna be really cool. So like I said, I've already marked off our edges, so we're gonna pull the filament tape. I'm gonna have Kyle help me. He'll be on one end, I'll pull the tape across, we'll get that set. So we'll have 5 sections here. Leggari, hashtag Leggari Nation will be in the middle, and then we'll have 2 sections outside of that. So it's gonna look really, really cool. So we'll get started on that. All right, so best way to do this is I'll have Kyle get on his mark. Now I'm gonna pull it, find my mark. And this filament tape does not tear, so you have to use a knife or cut it. And then we'll go back and rub this in really good, but we want to just kind of get it seated on the wall first. All right, there's our first one. All right, so now that we got our horizontal lines done, now to get this logo centered and figure out how wide we want this main plank or this main piece of tile, we need to get center of the wall, and we pull the tape. What's the measurement? 287.5. 287.5. Obviously, we're going to divide that by 2. 143 3/4. So I need to go find that, which is right here. We're gonna move this up because I wanna make our marks on this filament tape, and then I'm just gonna mark on the filament tape here. So 143 3/4. All right, so that's center of the wall. Now we'll bring our stencil over. All right, so what we want to do is figure out how much gap we want on the edges of our letters here. So me and Kyle were already kind of mapping this out. We were thinking about 15 inches, which would be about right here. So what this would look like, just kind of rough draft here, guys. That's probably a lot more than 2 feet, but yeah, a lot more than 2 feet, but it's gonna look something like that. Circle here, so we have a decent amount on the edge. Doesn't look like it's jammed in there, and it also doesn't look like there's too much space on the outside edge. So we need to measure the length of the letters and add 30 inches to that. And then that's gonna give us the width of our first tile here. So we have 142 inches from edge of both letters each side. So 142.5, and then we're gonna add 30 inches. That gives us 172 inches and a half. And then we're gonna divide that by 2. 86 1/4. So we're gonna go 86 1/4. So I'll have Kyle will hold me on the center of our wall. I'm gonna go 86 1/4 out. Okay, and we'll do the same thing the other way. All right, so there's our center. And then if we measure that, just to double check, we should have 172 1/2. And we got 172 1/2 on the money. So now we have a perfectly centered middle tile that's gonna fit our stencil with the hashtag Leggari Nation on it. And so now we can kind of mark this out, and then we'll just split the difference everywhere. It'll be real simple. All right, so what we're doing now is just marking out the bottom so we have straight edges. Now we can put our filament tape. All right, so now that we have our massive center tile, we're just gonna split the difference. So Obviously, we know this is center to this tile, so we can just run a mark to there. That'll be center. Do the same thing here. And then once we have those, we'll find center of these, run a mark. It's gonna look awesome. Now that we have our design done, our pattern is looking really cool. Now I'm gonna show you how to seal in all these lines to minimize any bleed marks from our concrete overlay. And again, guys, this goes for the same thing when you're painting walls, or you wanna get nice straight walls on any textured surface. Once you tape it off, paint the same color over your tape. That'll seal it up to minimize the bleed marks. So what I'm gonna do is just take the same color paint over all the spots, all the dots we made, paint around these to help seal those up, all the tape lines, let that dry, and then we'll apply our prep replacement primer and start coating. So I'm just gonna use a little 6-inch roller. Again, same paint that we did, same black paint we did on the wall. And then we're just gonna go just around everything, help seal it up. It's not 100% guarantee you're not gonna get bleed marks, but man, it helps a ton. Definitely worth the time to do it. We are ready to apply our prep replacement primer. I'm gonna be going over how to mix that. So your wall is basically ready, the design's done. your tape pattern's done right, then you paint it over that with the same wall color to help minimize bleed marks. So this prep replacement primer is going to help us get a chemical bond to that smooth paint wall, and then our overlay is going to bond to that. So the system works extremely well together with the prep replacement and our overlay, and then the prep's going to chemically bond to that paint. So you're going to get a really good adhesion with this process. So mixing this is very simple. We're just going to dump 2 containers in a 5-gallon bucket, mix it up, and then simply just dip and roll. 18-inch roller if you have a large wall, 9-inch roller if you have a small wall. Very easy to apply. So I'll just kind of go over mixing. So we have our part A here, our part B here. It's 2-to-1 ratio. Like I said, guys, it mixes really easy. It's not going to set up in a bucket. You have plenty working time, and it's a fast cure, so it's going to dry extremely fast, so we're able to coat right on it. So it's similar to our WB primer, but this is made for extreme adhesion for any smooth surfaces. So we'll get right into mixing. So you guys want to make sure you mix this up before you dump it. A lot of the additives can settle, and then we're going to dump that into the 5-gallon bucket. All right, now the part B is obviously a lot thicker, as you can see, and that's why we send these custom Leggari stir sticks. That way you can get in there and get all that out. You want to get as much out as we can, scrape the back. And then we'll just mix with the drill. Make sure it's on low speed. The stuff mixes really easy. So you guys will want to mix for about 2 to 3 minutes. Scrape your sides, scrape the bottom, just make sure it's thoroughly mixed. But again, it's very easy to mix. The part A and the B mix very, very easy. Once that's ready, you can go apply it to your wall. So before I apply the prep replacement primer, I want to just go over this tape line, right? We went over it after we taped the design to help lock it in to minimize bleed marks. But remember, this is a concrete wall, right? It's not a textured painted wall like you're typically going to have when you guys are installing these kits. So we have a lot more texture, deeper texture on this wall. So a lot of our tape lines, I can see kind of gaps in it, and we'll probably get some bleed marks there. I'm going to try to minimize that by how I apply that texture coat. But typically, if you guys are going over just a normal textured interior wall, it's not going to be this rough. This tape will seal better. But just keep in mind, you will get a better seal using blue painter's tape, and it comes in an array of sizes. This is pretty thick tape. It's got fibers in it so it doesn't tear. So you really have to press this down good if you're using our filament tape for the small grout lines. If you're doing more of like a thicker, wider grout lines like we did on our honeycomb wall, it's gonna seal a lot better. But just be cautious of that. I think we'll have a few touch-up areas that we'll have to hit on the grout lines, and so we'll go over that. We'll show you guys how to address that, but just to kind of forewarn you, I'm thinking we might. I mean, this prep's going to help seal this up also, so we'll see how it looks when we're done, but we probably will have a few spots we're going to touch up, but that's good because that'll show you guys how to do that. All right, so we're going to use a 3/8 snap roller, 18-inch, and then a 18-inch roller tray. We put a plastic bag over so we don't have to clean it out. And this primer's, we're not gonna need all this primer, obviously. It goes really, really far. So I don't wanna just dump it all in there. And we're just gonna apply this like we're painting a wall. This is made to go on thin, so we don't wanna put it on thick. Start in the middle. And it's formulated to go on white so you can see where you've hit, and then it'll dry clear. And what I like to do is just roll some sections out because it'll start to kind of separate and fisheye when you're going over smooth, glossy surfaces, and that's okay. Once it starts to tack up, roll over it again, and it'll kind of seal up everywhere. I'm just trying to make sure I don't have any big thick spots that are going to want to run and drip. I'm not worried about these roller lines, and so that you can kind of see how it kind of separated a little. And a lot of that's just the deep spots in the wall, the texture spots, but I'll get a little bit farther, come back, roll this out, and it'll even all that out. All right, now I'll jump back. You see it's already kind of tacking up. Again, this stuff dries really, really quick. So you don't want to wait too long before you come back and hit it. You'll see how much more even this will coat. And then it won't separate at all. And again, guys, I'm not worried about these roller lines. I just don't want really thick roller lines that can drip. So you can see the difference, just applying it right away, coming back a little bit after you've applied it, seals it up really, really good, fills everything in. So I want to go over how to mix the first coat, your texture coat, over your concrete wall kit. So first thing we want to do, get a mixing station set up. If you're mixing inside, it's good to have a vacuum to suck the dust that's going to come out. Make sure you guys are wearing masks. If you can mix it outside, you don't necessarily need a vacuum, but you should be wearing a mask. And then, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up the polymer. We're going to dump half of the polymer into a trash can because we're mixing 2 bags. That's not going to fit in a 5-gallon bucket. And then we're gonna mix the polymer up because a lot of that polymer will settle, and then we'll pour the remaining polymer into the trash can. So that's the first step. And then once we have the liquid polymer into the trash can, we can add our 2 bags. Now, you wanna pour the overlay slow. You don't want big old chunks falling out because they'll go straight to the bottom. They'll kind of weld to the bottom, and they'll be hard to mix in. So you'll see we'll kind of pour it slow, and I'm gonna be spinning the drill full speed. We'll have the vacuum going. And so it's 2 bags to 1 5-gallon polymer. So we'll get started here. I'll get our masks on. Kyle's gonna jump in here and help me mix, and you guys will see what that looks like. Make sure you guys mix this for about 2, 3, 4 minutes. You wanna make sure it's thoroughly mixed in. And this ain't gonna set up in the bucket, right? You got plenty working time. So we're gonna be applying it to the wall using an 18-inch roller. That's how we're gonna get it on the wall. And then I'm gonna flatten it off with the squeegee. Now what we did is we put some cardboard pieces on the ground. That way I have a nice flat surface. From the stuff that falls, I can push that back up and get it back on the wall, minimize wasting product and making a mess. That way we kind of keep the plastic clean. Easy way to do that. Put some cardboard down there and that's what the mess will be on. So we're gonna get the roller set up, dump this into some 5-gallon buckets. That way we can manage it better. And then we'll apply, pour it into the 18-inch roller tray as we need, going down, coating the wall. So we're gonna use a 1/2-inch nap, a little bigger nap. It'll hold more material. It'll just make it go a lot faster. So it's simple, just dip your 18-inch roller in there, get a bunch of that overlay product on here. I'm gonna apply it to the wall. And you always wanna start and push up, right? If I start and go down, you're just gonna push all that material off the roller, it's gonna splash the ground. So always start and then go up. And then when I'm squeegeeing, I'm trying to kind of spread that stuff over instead of just pulling down and knocking it off. And this is what it looks like. It'll take a minute for this big nap to get soaked up. We always want to start on the top and work our way down. And you can tell where you need more. If you can see the black, you're probably going to need a little more product there. So it's always good to have someone helping you. Someone can be applying it on the wall, and then you can squeegee it off or vice versa. So now that we got a good coat there, I can kind of start flattening it off with the squeegee. I don't have to press hard. You just want to knock it down. That's all we're looking for. And if I see any spots that need hit, I'll just say, hey, whoever's putting it on, give me some more up there. And then you can see all the product is splashed here. You can periodically start pulling that up on the wall. And we can kind of use as much product as we can. So I'll have Kyle jump in, start applying it for me, and then all I do is just focus on flattening it off. So we want to work from top to bottom in sections across the wall. You don't want to go all the way on the top. These drips and stuff will start drying out. So that's kind of the process, guys. Get it all coated, and then the last thing you want to do once you have a good coat on everything is just kind of pull random directions to get a random pattern out there. I'm not pressing hard, but you can kind of see the drag and scratch marks. They're all going random directions. That's what we want. And anytime you can pull up the material versus push it down, and I'll show you what I mean by that. If I can pull this up, I can just kind of keep pushing it over on the wall, and we're not dripping as much on the ground. And then he doesn't need to get the bottom. I got all the material here to get that. So another thing I want to hit on too is when you guys are priming the prep replacement, make sure you can go over that within 1 to 2 hours. You don't want that to set up too long. It'll just become a sealed surface. So the whole point of getting the right chemical bond with the wall, and our overlay is going over it when it's tacky. So it's really tacky right now. We put fans on it right when we were done, and we started coating on it within about a half an hour. So temperature dependent, but if you can get fans on it, it's gonna dry a lot faster and you'll be able to coat on it sooner. But again, just make sure you're going over that within that 1 to 2 hour window. Don't wait longer than that to apply the overlay. So we're ready for the scratch coat. Now, if you guys are doing a textured wall, you don't want it smooth, you're gonna mix another texture coat of ours, okay? So we're gonna be mixing scratch coat because we want a smooth wall. So just keep that in mind if you guys are going for a textured wall, like we did on the honeycomb. You're gonna have 2 texture coats that you're gonna do, but to get that smooth look, sand, and then a scratch coat. So that's what we're gonna do on this wall, because again, we're trying to mimic precast tilt-up concrete decorative wall. The other thing is Kyle sanded the wall with a wall sander that you guys can get from Amazon. They're relatively cheap for how easy they are to use. Now, if you want to use a palm sander, you can do that as well. Just try to hook them up to a vacuum. That'll minimize your dust, and you can just palm sand this. You want to use anywhere from 80 to 120 grit. Obviously, if it's not sanding well, get a heavier grit, but usually 80 grit's pretty good. You can do 60 grit, and then the sooner you can sand it after it's dry, the easier it's gonna sand. If we coated this wall and came back a couple days later and tried to sand it, it's gonna be really hard to sand. It's gonna be really hard. So try to sand, once it's dry or the next day. Don't wait too long after that. It's gonna take a long time to sand it. And then we also pulled these, what do we call these? Those little skid plates for chairs. We pulled these off so we could sand around it good. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can just take a palm sander and go around that, but it does make it nice to just pop those off, and they're cheap. I think it was 20 bucks for 58 of these, or however many are on the wall. So that's kind of where we're at now. The tools we're gonna use for this coat, just a big metal scraper attached to a handle, and then same thing, 1/2-inch nap roller. And I'm gonna use a 9-inch on this just so you guys can see a 9-inch we can just dip out of the bucket. It is kind of nice. But again, the 18-inch roller is gonna cover a little bit more square footage. And what we wanna do now, since we have a porous surface, because remember we went over our prep replacement primer, so it was kind of a sealed surface. So that wasn't soaking the moisture out of this texture coat. Now that we have a texture coat down, it's really porous. So this is gonna wanna suck the moisture, the polymer, out of our scratch coat. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna lightly hydrate, satisfy this concrete overlay here so it's not sucking all the polymer out of our next coat, and it'll also give us more working time. So what I like to do first is pre-hydrate. We call it pre-hydrating, and we wanna just mist it because it takes a minute for it to soak in. And last thing we want is a bunch of drips and just too much water on the wall. So I'll go through, I'll hit a spot, and then you can kind of see it starts to soak in. Come back, kind of fine tune any areas that look dry. And so that's kind of how you pre-hydrate. It's always good to pre-hydrate the whole wall, and then start coating. And then as we're coating, we'll probably wind up spraying it here and there to keep this overlay satisfied with the moisture, so it's not taking it away from our next coat. And then mixing, same exact way. We're just doing our scratch coat, and we only need 1 bag for this, so we're gonna mix it in the bucket that the polymer comes in, because it's only filled up halfway. So the bag will fit in there, we can mix in there. You just wanna be slow when you're mixing in there because it is gonna kind of fill it up. So what I'm gonna have Kyle do is he'll start mixing, I'll keep pre-hydrating, and then we'll get into how to apply it. All right, we are ready to apply it. So since we're gonna use a 9" on this, we can simply dip out of the bucket. It does make it nice. So Kyle's gonna apply it just like we did the texture coat. But again, this is our scratch coat, so it's like a paste. And we're gonna be scratching it tight to fill in the low spots, and that's gonna create a smooth concrete surface. So we're gonna get right to it. So it's very hard to screw this part up because the more random and maybe you get some dry spots, right? It just creates cool variations in this finished coat. And also you can see how it fills in like these scratches. So don't worry if you're getting these scratches, these drag marks in that first texture coat, because this is just gonna fill those in. So the guy that's doing the flattening it off and scratching it, his main job is to just fine tune everything, make sure everything's hit. And again, if you want to leave missed spots throughout, kind of like I got here, it'll look really cool. It creates a cool look. If you want more of a smooth wall, you're just gonna really fine tune those areas and get them flattened off. See how much wall I got just from picking it up off the ground. If you're gonna be picking up off the ground, make sure you have clean cardboard. If you start getting chunks mixed in with this, you're gonna start getting drag marks and scratches when you're scratching it off, like kind of like right here. And so we wanna minimize those. But this is what I'm talking about, variation and stuff, right? These are from it kind of setting up a little. I can slick that off and get it to look more like that if I want, but I always like to leave some random spots throughout the wall that kind of make it more natural looking, like concrete walls. All right guys, I missed something that's pretty important. Last thing you want to do is clean out this bottom edge. So we move the cardboard and we want to get any thick spots away from this bottom edge. That way when we pull the tape, it's a lot easier to pull. So we're ready to apply the stencil. I'm gonna go over just kind of how we cut it out, because the stencil, it was a lot wider, right? The transfer paper and how they made it. So we made it fit into this panel that we have here. Easiest way to do that, and just bear with me, I'm gonna try to explain this so you guys can understand it easy. So what we did is we found center of our hashtag Leggari Nation, okay? So there's center of the letters. We're not worried about anything else. We wanna find center of the tallest point of the letters, which is the hashtag. So we got our center mark there, and then we know our panels are 2 foot wide, so we went a foot out, and then we did the same thing over here. So this is the same height as the hashtag. We're not finding center to the end because the end's not as big as the hashtag. The hashtag's like out here. So we got the same mark where the hashtag was, and we went a foot out. So that got our width, and then to do the length, we measured from the farthest point of the hashtag, farthest point of the end. We found the center mark, which is right here, and then we measured the length of this panel, and we put the middle of the length of the panel, so whatever, I think it was 172 3/4. Half of that, we put the tape right here. I marked 174 3/4, and then I marked the tape on this side. So that gave us the length, and we did that on both ends, and that gave us the length, and we cut it. And then all we had to do was center it up on the panel, and then we double check. So we went from our center mark of the hashtag to here and to here. They're the same distance, so now we know this is centered here. And then we also did the same thing here. We measured from here to there and here to there. They were all the same. So this is centered, and then it's always good to just throw a level. We threw a level on the flat part of the letters, and this is level. So that's the easiest way to do large stencils like this, because you can't see through, right? You can't see the back. So it's good to map it out, double check your measurements, get it on the wall, tape it, double check everything, because once you put it on, it's on. So now I'm gonna peel off the backing. Kyle's gonna hold it. And then we're gonna cut this. You can use scissors, knife. Now Kyle's gonna bring it back around, and he's just gonna kind of keep a little tension on it as I'm applying this down. Now, so since this is a stencil, it's not a big deal if we get bubbles out here, whatever. All our product is filling in here. So I'm not really worried about getting bubbles. I just want to make sure this goes down nice and flat. And then we do the same thing on this side. Now this side's stuck, so we can pull off all the tape, pull it back, peel that backing off, and do the same thing. All right, so I'm gonna flatten this off with a squeegee, just like we did the other side. So when you guys are doing this, make sure the guy out there holding it's not kind of holding down on it, right? You wanna make sure you're kind of level where you're holding that, because if he's holding it down and slack, there's a chance that it could start to kind of go down and be off. So if that happens, a lot of times you can kind of peel that back if needed. But yeah, just make sure the guy that's holding that out there is pretty level with where it needs to be. All right, so now let's just stand back and look at it. So now we want to make sure we press this down good before we pull this transfer paper off, right? And when you guys are going around smaller letters or logos or whatever, you want to be a little more careful. These are pretty big, so they should stick just fine. But we just want to go around and make sure these are all pressed in good. Now we can pull that transfer paper off. So guys, last thing you want to do is what Kyle's doing, is just really press all these edges down. This is the main focus. So logo's ready. We can apply our first coat on there. We're going to be doing black texture, and then we're going to sand it and do black scratch coat. So it'll be a similar profile, smoothness as the gray, but it's going to match all the grout lines, and we're going to apply it to the logo same way we did the wall. Just dip and roll, get it up there, flatten it off with the squeegee. Really, really simple. So Kyle's going ahead of me. I'm just really pressing the seams down, and then I'm just gonna coat a section and flatten it off. So you guys, I'm just going random directions as I flatten it off. It'll give us a cool pattern, kind of like we have random directions on that. That's it. Let this set up. We'll sand it and then do the scratch coat to make it smooth. All right, so we're at the point where we're gonna sand the texture coat down. Same process we did on the gray. We did the texture coat, sanded it, and then we're gonna scratch coat it. So I need to sand this. It's really rough right now. All the crushed marble's kind of sticking out. So I'm gonna run 80 grit, 100 grit, whatever you guys have, right around there. Sand it down with a palm sander since it's a small area. And then we'll apply that scratch coat to get this smooth to match the walls. So all I'm gonna be using is a simple palm sander. I got 80 grit on here now, and I have it hooked up to a vacuum to minimize dust. I wiped it down And what I'm doing is I made the scratch coat just a little thicker because I want to get this nice and smooth. I made it a little bit thicker. I didn't add as much liquid polymer to it. And now it's more of like a paste. You can kind of see it's gonna fill in better and create a smoother finish. But I still wanna hydrate. I just wanna mist it because, again guys, this will just soak all the polymer out of that scratch coat if you don't hydrate first. And then I'm just gonna get some on my roller here. Just get a bunch on the wall. And then take my flat scraper. And notice when I sanded past the logo because I wanted it all to be smooth when I scratch it. So I just kind of work that in until I get it as flat and filled in as I want. That's pretty much it. So notice how I keep hydrating as I'm going. See how it keeps drying out on me. And if it's easier to just put it on there with your scraper, you can do that also. And if it starts to tear on you guys, because it's already drying out, just you can mist it a little bit. It's not gonna hurt it. And that'll kind of make it a nice cream again. There you have it. So we'll let this set up about an hour, maybe 2, depending on how cold it is where you guys are coating. It's pretty cold in here, so we might give it about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we'll show you how to pull the stencil off. All right, so it's time to pull the stencil off and reveal the hashtag Leggari Nation. So I'm just gonna start pull down. It's very, very simple. And you guys are gonna see the process right here. So we'll just start on a corner and we'll start to reveal the letters. Scraper, knife, anything. We obviously know this needs to be pulled. We just don't want to kind of gouge into the layer underneath. So I'll just kind of, once you get it started, it's pretty simple. That's how you put a logo on a wall. A few things I want to point out, guys. If you just want to do a cool logo, maybe your business, maybe in your office space, your commercial building, maybe your restaurant, maybe your game room, you can do these logos just like we did this right over your painted wall. So same exact process, and it's not going to look like you just painted it on there because we have depth here. It's sticking out away from the wall. It's not thin like paint. So you can do these logos anywhere you want. You don't have to do the whole concrete wall like we did. You can simply just put this over. Say you had a white wall and you wanted to do a cool logo, you could just put the logo on. So we have about 7 colors that you guys can choose from for logo designs. You can mix and match however you want, but again, that's just another option if you guys are wanting to just do a simple, cool logo on your wall. But now we're gonna actually show you how to stain and do like an antiquing to this wall, because we want this to look like a weathered concrete wall, add a lot of depth, character to this wall. So if you guys are looking for that just plain gray concrete wall, you would just do your sealer on it now, your top coat on it now. But we're gonna show you how to do the stain and kind of add that antiquing look to it. But again, if you want to keep it just gray, you would just put your top coat on right now. But we're gonna add some dark gray to this wall to antique it. I want to go over just the stain options for you guys so you can kind of see them all up against the wall. So this is just the gray like we did here. Now this is sealed, these are all sealed, so this will darken up a little bit when it's sealed. But these are kind of the stain options. So we have our light gray. So this is just standard gray basically. Light gray, dark gray, black, light brown, medium brown, dark brown. So a lot of different options when you guys are doing the staining. And we're gonna probably go with the light gray, just because we don't want to make it too dark since we have the black grout lines. We want to kind of just add some cool variations throughout it, and you'll see when we stain it what that does to the wall, but it adds a lot of character to the wall. So stain options right there, and you can mix and match. You can do a light gray, a medium brown. We've had people do multiple colors at a time, a lot of different ways to apply it. But we're gonna show you one of the easiest ways to apply it for like an antiquing weathered look. So we're gonna go over mixing the stain. Now they come in two sizes. This is a countertop stain, and then we have 5 gallons. So obviously large walls, you might wanna do 5 gallons, or you can order a couple of these stains, and we'll kind of see how far one of these goes. They go pretty far, especially if you're doing like antiquing, light staining. But comes with 20 ounces of Leggari stain, and this is our light gray. And then you're gonna add 12 ounces of isopropyl alcohol. So simplest way to do it, measure out your 12 ounces, and then we're gonna pour that into the jug. Try not to spill any of it. Put the lid back on, and then we'll just shake this up. So when you guys order the countertop stain size, you're gonna get these little sprayers, which work great for antiquing, being a lot more, adding finer detail when you're staining. But we always like to use strainers when we pour out of here. And this is just a paint strainer we've cut up. No point in using a big one, cut them down. And then kind of push it down in there so you have some room for that stain to get in there. And then we're just gonna dump it in. These will clog real easy if you don't strain it. So this is basically ready to go. And then we'll show you how to spray it on the wall. All right, so the antiquing, what we kind of call it, very cool process, and you can see it's just really random. What's happening is Tim's spraying it in front of me, as you can see, and then there's spots that are drying over here. Once it gets to about that point, you start rubbing it around and smearing it around. So you want some dry spots throughout, some wet spots, and that's what gives you all these highlighted deep spots right? We got some darkness here, lighter there. It's just really random. So it adds a lot of character to the walls. And then once it kind of starts to dry out, you just kind of rub it around. And it's very cool because we can always go back, touch up any spots we want. Maybe we want to make this spot a little darker. I'll just tell them, hey, go stain a little there. We'll let it dry out a little, and then I'll rub it in again. So you can really fine tune when you're doing this type of staining. So you can see the variation. You're getting all these variations from the wet spots versus the dry spots. And that's kind of the look we're going for. So I'm just using, it's called Pro Grip. It's for washing windows. And that's all it is. They don't make them where they screw on. I mean, you might be able to find them where they screw on to a pole. This one doesn't, so we just taped it up. But it's just like a microfiber pad. Works really, really good for doing this type of staining on walls. So another thing I want to point out, we did black grout lines on here, so we painted the wall black. If you guys are doing like a white grout line or something, you're going to want to stain before you pull that tape, because the stain will affect lighter colored grout lines. So since we're doing black, you're never going to notice it. Same thing with our logo, you're never going to notice it because it's black anyway. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to do something like this and you have lighter colored grout lines that you're going to have in your design. Make sure you stain before you pull that tape off. You can see Tim's just staining it. We're not worried about the runs, the drips. I want to let this, because I'll show you guys, if I hit it right after he stains it, it takes it right off. So what we want to do is let that kind of soak in random spots, and then when I rub it around, those spots that are soaked in, it's not going to come off. Other spots it'll take more stain off, and that's how you get that, all that variation in. So this is what I'm talking about. He sprayed all this, it was all wet like here. This is drying out. So that's gonna hold that stain really well. This will kind of take it off. Anywhere it's wet, really wet, it'll just wipe right off. So I wanna let this set up just a little bit more before I start rubbing it in. So you can see like all this is where it was dry. All these different antiquing and weathered look, that's from where it dried. All this is where it was a little wetter, it kind of rubbed off a little more. See how it just rubs off where it's really wet? So I'd wait there, and I'm just going around and hitting spots that are kind of dried out. So it's time to apply the urethane. We're gonna be doing our WB urethane in matte. Looks really good on walls, and I'm gonna go over the mixing process. So got the urethane here, 5-gallon bucket, and then I got my water, because we do add water to our urethane as we're mixing it. So we're gonna pop this box open here, pull the urethane out. So we got our A, we got our B, and it says on here, must mix with part B, this is the A, and then blend in 13 ounces of clean cold water. So I have my 13 ounces here. That's all ready to go. I got my drill, my paddle mixer. And so we're just gonna give this part A a little shake. And we're gonna dump this in. Let this drain out all the way. And then we'll tilt it back in case we have any in the handle there. Let that drain out. Just let it drain until it starts to slowly drip. And then we'll add our B. I'm not worried about getting all this out because we're gonna add the water into the part B. The water into this. Give it a nice good shake. And then I like to add it as I'm mixing. Put your drill on slow. So you want to mix this about 2 to 3 minutes. Scrape the sides as you're mixing. So we'll finish mixing this up and then we'll show you guys how to apply it. Just curious your guys' thoughts. Comment below if you like that natural gray color or if you liked it when it was stained like this. So let us know what you guys like more. I'm leaning more towards, I always like that natural gray concrete look, but the stain's super cool. It looks really weathered and just old and rustic. Awesome, awesome look with the stains, and there's unlimited options as far as staining, colors, combos, designs, textures. So, but yeah, comment below. Let us know if you like the natural gray concrete look more or after it's stained. So you guys saw me mix up the urethane. We're just gonna dip and roll. 18-inch roller tray. Plastic bag in it. Make sure you guys are using those contractor thick bags that we don't tear holes in them, and you can just take the bag out, throw it away. You don't have to clean these 18-inch roller trays out. It's really nice. And then 3/8 snap roller, de-shedded, and again, just dip and roll. I'm gonna start at one end, work my way across, and you guys will have enough urethane to do 2 coats if needed. We'll put 1 coat on, see how it looks. If we want to add another coat, we can do that. And this is our matte urethane. So I'm gonna dump it in the roller tray here. And I don't like to fill the roller tray up all the way. Always takes a second to get these rollers saturated with the urethane and just work our way up and down. We just want to roll it out thin, get rid of any thick roller lines. Same thing, start in the middle, work our way to the edges. So I want to talk to you guys about a few things that we would do different if we did this wall again that might help you on your project. The first thing I'm going to point out is when we taped our lines, we came back with the same black paint and brushed in to seal it. But this wall is really rough because it's concrete overlay. Your walls, your textured interior walls would be a lot smoother. So it held a lot of paint on these gaps. And then when we pulled the tape, it wanted to pull some of these edges off and they weren't as crisp. So we had to come back, tape this off again and patch the gray chip spots. Took a lot of work, but you know, you can repair stuff like that. But if we did it again, I probably wouldn't brush over with the paint. I would just tape it really good, try to seal it really good, and then just coat over it. The other thing, you probably should wait before you pull the tape until the stuff's completely dry. We did it wet. We were trying to get this thing done that day. It's always good not to rush your projects, especially if you're doing stuff on your home or for your business or something, right? So let the material dry, let it get really hard, and then pull your tape. That'll help with the crisp lines, and then also not taping or painting over that with a bunch of paint. Now, if you do paint over it, just make sure you do it really, really thin. That way you're not building up a bunch of paint that's gonna tend to pull off the material when you pull the tape off. Hope that makes sense to you guys. I'm gonna talk about the sealer for a little bit. So you guys, when you're doing your second coat, make sure you apply it the same way that you did your first coat. I showed you guys how to apply the sealer. It's the same exact process. We don't need to show you the second coat. And then as far as dry times, you don't have to wait till the next day to coat over this with your urethane. You can do 2 coats in one day. You just want to wait until that urethane is completely clear. You don't want any milky whiteness to it, right? Even around like your grout lines and stuff, make sure those are all clear and dry. It can be tacky and sticky, and you can apply your second layer. Obviously, the longer you wait, the better, but the urethane dries relatively quickly over the concrete overlay because it's soaking in to the overlay. So this is just 1 coat, and you can see how nice it looks. If we were gonna do another coat, like I said, we would apply it the same exact way. A few things I wanna point out is if you wind up getting, say you had a thick roller edge or a roller line that you could see, when you guys are doing your second coat, we'll just pretend maybe right here is your roller line all the way down the wall. Try not to, when you're doing that second coat, make sure you're overlapping that. Like here's the center of the roller. Your roller's this wide, right? And the center of the roller's going over that roller line. Last thing you wanna do is have your roller match up with that roller line and have another edge there that'll make it show up more. So always try to overlap any roller lines you have using the center of your roller. That'll help eliminate those. But yeah, the urethane dries relatively quick, and if you can put a fan on it to speed up the process, we put a fan on this, and we probably could have did our second coat in about 2 hours. And it's pretty cold in here, so 70 degrees inside a house, this stuff's gonna dry a lot faster, especially if you have some airflow. Just make sure you guys are minimizing dust and debris getting on it because it is relatively sticky. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Apply the sealer, the urethane the same exact way as the first coat, and you can create finishes just like this.